The conference room at Meridian Technologies buzzed with nervous energy as CEO Marcus Chun stared at the contract lying before him. $1 million. The number seemed to mock him from the pristine white paper, each zero representing another sleepless night he'd endured over the past month. Around the mahogany table sat his board of directors, their faces a mixture of skepticism and barely concealed panic. "This is insane, Marcus," muttered CFO Patricia Walsh, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses for the third time in 10 minutes. "We're essentially betting our entire emergency fund on someone we've never worked with before. Someone who claims she can solve our automation crisis in 6 months when our entire engineering team has been struggling with it for 2 years." Marcus understood their concerns. Meridian Technologies had built its reputation on manufacturing precision components for aerospace companies, but their outdated production systems were hemorrhaging money. Orders were backing up, quality control was slipping, and their biggest client, Quantum Aerospace, had already issued 2 warnings about delayed deliveries. If they lost that contract, the company would face bankruptcy within 18 months. The woman they were considering hiring went by the name Elena Vasquez, though Marcus suspected that wasn't her real name. She had appeared seemingly out of nowhere 3 weeks ago, responding to their desperately worded job posting with a proposal that was both audacious and terrifying. She claimed she could revolutionize their entire production line using a combination of artificial intelligence, robotics, and what she cryptically referred to as predictive manufacturing protocols. What made her proposal even more unsettling was her unusual condition. She would work completely alone, with no oversight from Meridian's engineering team, and she insisted on working during night shifts when the factory floor was empty. She would accept payment only upon successful completion of the project, but she demanded the full $1 million be placed in escrow as a guarantee of the company's commitment. "Tell me again why we're even considering this," said board member Robert Kim, his voice heavy with doubt. "Her resume is impressive, but it's also vague. Systems integration for various Fortune 500 companies could mean anything. And this requirement to work alone without any collaboration with our team, it's unheard of." Marcus had asked himself the same questions countless times. Elena's credentials were legitimate, but mysterious. She held advanced degrees in mechanical engineering, computer science, and industrial psychology from prestigious universities, yet there was no digital footprint of her previous work. When pressed for references, she provided contact information for 3 companies, but when Marcus called, he was told that the projects were classified, and they could only confirm that Elena had exceeded all expectations. The strangest part of their initial meeting had been Elena's demeanor. While most consultants were eager to impress, spending hours detailing their methodologies and showing flashy presentations, Elena had been almost dismissive of traditional approaches. She spent most of their 2-hour meeting walking through the factory floor, observing the workers and machinery with an intensity that made some employees uncomfortable. "Your systems aren't just outdated," she had told Marcus bluntly. "They're fighting against human nature. You try to force people to work like machines instead of designing machines that complement human intuition. That's why every efficiency improvement you've implemented has created new bottlenecks." Her analysis had been uncomfortably accurate. Meridian had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on consultants who promised revolutionary changes, only to see minimal improvements that were quickly eroded by worker resistance and unforeseen complications. Elena claimed she could increase production efficiency by 300% while simultaneously reducing errors by 90%. "The risk-to-reward ratio actually favors us," Marcus said, breaking the tense silence in the conference room. "If she fails, we're out $1 million, which is less than we'll lose if we can't fulfill the quantum contract. If she succeeds, we'll recoup that investment in the first month of improved operations." "That's a big if," Patricia replied. "What happens if she damages our existing systems? What if her revolutionary approach makes things worse? We could be looking at months of downtime while we rebuild everything from scratch." The question hung in the air like a sword. Marcus had negotiated some safeguards into the contract. Elena had agreed to a performance bond that would cover the cost of restoring their systems to their current state if her modifications failed. She had also agreed to a series of milestone payments, with the majority of her fee contingent on measurable improvements in production metrics. But there was something else driving Marcus's decision, something he hadn't shared with his board. 3 days after their initial meeting, Elena had sent him a detailed analysis of their production problems that demonstrated an understanding of their systems that should have been impossible for an outsider to achieve. She had identified inefficiencies that their own engineers had missed and proposed solutions that were elegant in their simplicity. More importantly, she had done something that convinced Marcus she was exactly what Meridian needed. She had hacked into their production monitoring system and spent one night subtly adjusting parameters on a single production line. The next morning, that line's output had increased by 15% with 0 defects. When Marcus confronted her about the unauthorized access, Elena had smiled and said, "I needed to prove that I understand your systems better than you do. Now you know I'm not just another consultant with theories." The board continued debating for another hour, but Marcus had already made his decision. He signed a contract and transferred the $1 million into escrow. As the meeting dispersed, Patricia lingered behind. "I hope you know what you're doing, Marcus. This could either save the company or destroy it." "Sometimes," Marcus replied, watching Elena's signature dry on the contract. "The biggest risk is not taking any risks at all." That evening, Elena arrived at the Meridian facility with nothing more than a black duffel bag and a laptop case. The security guard who let her in later told Marcus that she had walked through the factory floor for 3 hours without touching a single piece of equipment, just watching and listening to the machinery with the focus of a musician tuning an instrument. When a morning shift arrived the next day, they found a handwritten note taped to the main production board. "Day 1 begins tonight. Expect the unexpected." It was signed simply with the letter E. Marcus had committed his company's future to a woman who worked in shadows and spoke in riddles. He had bet everything on someone who might be a genius or might be elaborate fraud. As he lay awake that first night, listening to the distant hum of the factory where Elena was beginning her mysterious work, Marcus realized he had crossed a line from which there was no return. The real question wasn't whether Elena could deliver on her promises. The question was whether Meridian Technologies would survive long enough to find out. In the darkness of his bedroom, Marcus felt the weight of $1 million gamble pressing down on him like a physical force, and he wondered if he had just saved his company or signed its death warrant. 2 weeks into Elena's project, the Meridian Technologies facility had become a place of whispered conversations and nervous glances. Workers arriving for the morning shift would find evidence of Elena's nocturnal activities scattered throughout the factory floor. New sensors attached to machinery, cables running in patterns that seemed to follow no logical blueprint, and, most unsettling of all, post-it notes with cryptic instructions written in her precise handwriting. "Recalibrate pressure sensor to 847 psi at 3:47 a.m. daily," read one note attached to a hydraulic press that had been problematic for months. Another, found on a conveyor system, simply said, "Listen for the whisper between the 3rd and 4th bearing. When it stops, increase speed by 12%. Marcus found himself making excuses to stay late, hoping to catch a glimpse of Elena's work, but she seemed to possess an uncanny ability to avoid being seen. The security cameras, which should have recorded her every movement, mysteriously malfunctioned during the hours she was present. When the IT department investigated, they found that the system was functioning perfectly, but somehow Elena's image never appeared clearly on any recording. She existed in their facility like a ghost, leaving behind only evidence of her presence and increasingly dramatic improvements in production efficiency. The changes were undeniable. Production Line 3, which had been running at 67% capacity for 8 months, was now operating at 92% efficiency with a defect rate that had dropped from 12% to less than 2%. Line 7, previously the most problematic in the facility, was producing components with tolerances so precise that quality control technician Sarah Martinez initially assumed the measuring equipment was malfunctioning. "I've been doing this job for 15 years, Sarah confided to Marcus during a hastily arranged meeting. "I know these machines like they're my own children, and I'm telling you, this isn't possible." Yesterday, Line 7 produced 847 components without a single rejection. The statistical probability of that happening with our previous setup was essentially zero. But it wasn't just the machinery that was changing. Elena's mysterious notes were having an equally profound effect on the workers themselves. Machine operator Carlos Rivera, a 20-year veteran who had been considering early retirement due to chronic back pain from operating outdated equipment, found that following Elena's ergonomic suggestions had not only eliminated his discomfort, but actually made his work easier. "She left me a diagram showing how to adjust my workstation," Carlos explained to his supervisor. "Move my controls 3 inches to the left, raise my platform by 2 inches, and change the angle of my monitor by 15 degrees. I thought it was crazy, but now I feel like I could work a double shift without breaking a sweat." The improvements weren't limited to individual workstations. Elena seemed to understand the factory floor as a living ecosystem, where changes to one element created ripple effects throughout the entire system. She had somehow identified the critical path dependencies that Meridian's own engineers had failed to recognize, optimizing the flow of materials and information in ways that seemed almost intuitive rather than calculated. Floor supervisor Janet Brooks had initially been skeptical of Elena's unconventional approach, but she was forced to admit that the results were remarkable. "Production scheduling used to be like solving a puzzle where half the pieces were missing," she told Marcus. "Now it's like the pieces are arranging themselves. We're hitting delivery targets that we previously would have said were impossible." The most dramatic change occurred during the 3rd week, when Elena apparently spent an entire night rewiring the communication system between production lines. Workers arriving Monday morning discovered that their computer terminals now displayed real-time information about every aspect of the manufacturing process, presented in a format that was immediately intuitive even to employees with limited technical training. Machine operator Lisa Chun described the new system as revolutionary. "Before, if something went wrong on line 4, I wouldn't know about it until the problem had already affected my line. Now I can see exactly what's happening throughout the entire facility. It's like having X-ray vision." But Elena's methods remained as mysterious as her identity. Marcus hired a private investigator to learn more about her background, but the investigation yielded more questions than answers. Elena Vasquez existed in official records, but her history before joining Meridian was a carefully constructed maze of legitimate credentials and strategic gaps. She had worked for companies that confirmed her employment, but refused to discuss the nature of her projects. She held patents for manufacturing innovations, but the patent applications were filed through law firms that specialized in maintaining client confidentiality. The investigator's final report painted a picture of someone who had deliberately obscured her past while establishing an unquestionable reputation for excellence. "Your consultant is either extremely paranoid about privacy," the investigator concluded, "or she's working on projects that require the highest levels of security clearance." Marcus's curiosity about Elena's methods reached its peak when he decided to stake out the facility one Thursday night, positioning himself in the parking lot with a thermos of coffee and a pair of binoculars. He watched Elena arrive at 11:30 p.m., carrying her usual black duffel bag and moving with the confident stride of someone who owned the space she occupied. For 6 hours, Marcus observed the facility from his car, watching as lights flickered on and off in different sections of the building. Occasionally, he would see Elena's silhouette moving past a window, but her activities remained mysterious. What struck him most was the apparent randomness of her movements. She would spend 30 minutes in the quality control lab, then disappear into the storage area for an hour, then emerge on the production floor, where she would stand motionless next to a specific machine for 20 minutes before moving on. At 5:15 a.m., 15 minutes before the morning shift was scheduled to arrive, Elena emerged from the building and walked directly to Marcus's car. She tapped on his window with the casual confidence of someone who had known he was there all along. "Curiosity is a useful trait in a CEO," she said when Marcus rolled down the window. "But trust is more valuable. Your production metrics have improved by 47% in 3 weeks. Your defect rate is approaching 0. Your workers are happier and more productive than they've been in years. Does the method matter more than the results?" Marcus studied her face in the dim parking lot lighting. Elena appeared to be in her early 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a functional ponytail and intelligent eyes that seemed to absorb information like a computer processor. She dressed in black work clothes that showed signs of honest labor, and her hands bore the calluses of someone who worked with tools rather than just theories. "I need to know that you're not putting my company at risk," Marcus said. "Some of the changes you've made are so fundamental that if something goes wrong, we might not be able to recover." Elena nodded as if she had expected this conversation. "Everything I've done can be reversed within 72 hours if necessary. I maintain detailed documentation of all modifications, though I doubt you'll need it. What I've created here isn't a house of cards that will collapse if one element fails. It's a robust system that will continue improving even after I'm gone." She handed him a tablet displaying real-time production data that Marcus had never seen before. The information was presented in intuitive graphs and charts that told the story of Meridian's transformation more clearly than any formal report could have achieved. "Your quantum aerospace contract requires delivery of 15,000 precision components by the end of next month," Elena continued. "At your previous production rate, you would have delivered 11,400 units, triggering penalty clauses that would have cost you $340,000. At your current rate, you'll deliver 16,200 units 3 days early. That's a swing of nearly $700,000 in your favor." Marcus stared at the data, unable to argue with numbers that represented the difference between survival and bankruptcy for his company. "How are you doing this? What's your background that makes this level of improvement possible?" Elena smiled, and for the first time since he'd met her, Marcus saw something approaching warmth in her expression. "I spent 15 years learning how manufacturing systems fail, and 5 years learning how to make them succeed. The details of my background are less important than your willingness to trust unconventional solutions to conventional problems." As she walked away, leaving Marcus alone in the parking lot with more questions than answers, the morning shift began arriving for work. Marcus watched his employees enter the building with a spring in their step that had been absent for months. Whatever Elena was doing, it was working, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was part of something much larger and more complex than a simple manufacturing consultation. The transformation of Meridian Technologies was accelerating beyond anything Marcus had imagined possible, and Elena remained as mysterious as ever. As he drove home in the early morning light, Marcus realized that his million-dollar gamble was paying dividends he couldn't have predicted, but the biggest revelations were yet to come. The morning of Elena's final demonstration arrived with an unexpected twist that would forever change how Marcus understood the concept of expertise. 6 weeks after signing the million-dollar contract, Meridian Technologies had transformed from a struggling manufacturer into an industry leader. But Elena's most dramatic revelation was yet to come. Marcus arrived at the facility to find Elena waiting in the conference room, accompanied by a woman he didn't recognize. The stranger was impeccably dressed in a navy blue business suit and carried herself with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to making important decisions. Elena introduced her as Dr. Amanda Foster, a researcher from the Institute for Advanced Manufacturing Technologies. "Dr. Foster has been observing our project from the beginning," Elena explained, her tone more formal than Marcus had ever heard it. "What I'm about to show you will require independent verification to be believable." The conference room had been reconfigured overnight. The familiar mahogany table was pushed against one wall, replaced by a series of workstations equipped with tablets, monitoring equipment, and what appeared to be a complex control panel. Large monitors displayed real-time feeds from every production line in the facility, along with data streams that Marcus didn't recognize. For the past 6 weeks, Elena began, you've assumed that my improvements to your facility were the result of advanced engineering knowledge and innovative technology. That assumption is partially correct, but it doesn't tell the complete story. She gestured to a chair positioned in the center of the room. I'm going to demonstrate the final phase of your facility's optimization. During this demonstration, I'll be working blindfolded, relying entirely on sensory input that doesn't depend on vision. Dr. Foster will verify that I cannot see anything during the process. Marcus felt a familiar knot of anxiety forming in his stomach. After 6 weeks of unprecedented success, Elena was apparently planning to perform some kind of stunt that could jeopardize everything she had accomplished. Elena, our production is running perfectly. Why risk disrupting it with an unnecessary demonstration? Because, she replied, accepting a thick black blindfold from Dr. Foster, understanding how something works is as important as seeing that it works. What I've created here isn't just a more efficient manufacturing system. It's a new paradigm for human-machine interaction that challenges fundamental assumptions about industrial automation. As Dr. Foster secured the blindfold, Elena continued speaking. Traditional manufacturing optimization focuses on mechanical precision and computational efficiency. But the most sophisticated machines ever created still can't match human intuition for pattern recognition and adaptive problem solving. The question is, how do you combine the best aspects of human cognition with the power of automated systems? Marcus watched nervously as Elena, now completely blindfolded, moved to the central control station. Dr. Foster positioned herself where she could observe Elena's every movement, occasionally taking photographs and making notes on a tablet. Production Line 5 is currently operating at 94% efficiency, Elena announced, her fingers dancing across the control panel without hesitation. There's a harmonic vibration in the third assembly station that's causing micro-stress fractures in approximately 0.3% of components. The quality control sensors haven't detected the problem yet because the fractures won't become visible for another 47 hours. Marcus glanced at the monitoring displays, which showed Line 5 operating flawlessly with no indication of any problems. How can you possibly know that? The sensors show everything is normal. Elena's hands continued moving across the controls with fluid precision, adjusting parameters that Marcus couldn't identify. The vibration creates a specific acoustic signature that's masked by the normal operational sounds of the facility. Human hearing can detect patterns that electronic sensors miss, but only if you know what to listen for. She paused for a moment, tilting her head as if listening to something beyond the range of normal human perception. There, the harmonic is corrected. Line 5 will now operate at 97% efficiency with a defect rate below 0.1%. The demonstration continued for 2 hours, with Elena identifying and correcting problems throughout the facility that weren't detectable by conventional monitoring systems. She adjusted the timing of material deliveries based on subtle changes in ambient temperature that affected production rates. She modified quality control parameters based on variations in humidity that influence component specifications. She optimized worker schedules based on patterns of human performance that varied throughout the day. Most remarkably, she accomplished all of this while completely blindfolded, relying on a combination of audio cues, tactile feedback, and what could only be described as an almost supernatural understanding of complex systems. Marcus watched in fascination as Elena's hands moved across the control interfaces with the confidence of a concert pianist, making adjustments that resulted in immediate improvements in production metrics. "This is impossible," whispered CFO Patricia Walsh, who had arrived midway through the demonstration. No human being could have this level of awareness of such a complex system. Dr. Foster looked up from her notes. "Actually, What you're witnessing is the result of a very specific type of training that combines traditional engineering education with techniques borrowed from fields as diverse as musical performance, martial arts, and meditation. Elena has developed what we call systemic intuition, the ability to perceive patterns and relationships in complex systems that aren't apparent through conventional analysis. Elena removed her blindfold and turned to face Marcus. What I've been doing here for the past 6 weeks isn't magic or advanced technology. It's applied human intuition supported by technology designed to amplify rather than replace human cognitive abilities. She gestured to the monitoring equipment surrounding them. Every modification I've made to your facility includes sensors and feedback systems that provide information to human operators in formats that match natural human pattern recognition capabilities. Instead of forcing people to interpret abstract data displays, the system presents information through audio, haptic, and visual cues that humans can process intuitively. Marcus struggled to process what he was seeing. Are you saying that the improvements we've seen are the result of enhanced human perception rather than automated systems? Both, Elena replied. I've created a hybrid system where human intuition and machine precision work together synergistically. Your workers aren't just operating machines, they're communicating with them. The equipment provides feedback that helps humans make better decisions, and human insights guide machine operations in ways that pure automation never could. Dr. Foster stepped forward with her tablet, showing Marcus data that documented the entire demonstration. What Elena has developed here represents a fundamental breakthrough in manufacturing technology. Traditional automation tries to eliminate human variability from production processes. Elena's approach amplifies human capabilities while maintaining the precision and consistency that automated systems provide. The implications were staggering. Elena hadn't just improved Meridian's production efficiency. She had created a new model for industrial operations that could revolutionize manufacturing across entire industries. The million-dollar investment that Marcus had considered a desperate gamble now appeared to be one of the most valuable technology acquisitions in the company's history. The blindfolded demonstration was necessary, Elena explained, because it proves that the system works based on genuine sensory input rather than visual interfaces that could be considered conventional automation. What you've witnessed is human-machine collaboration at a level that's never been achieved before. Over the following weeks, word of Meridian's transformation spread throughout the manufacturing industry. Companies began approaching Elena with offers that dwarfed the $1 million Marcus had paid, but she declined them all. When Marcus asked why she wasn't capitalizing on her breakthrough, Elena's response was characteristically enigmatic. This technology isn't ready for widespread implementation, she told him. It requires a level of trust and cooperation between humans and machines that most organizations aren't prepared to handle. What we've accomplished here at Meridian was possible because your workers were willing to embrace new ways of thinking about their relationship with technology. 6 months after Elena completed her project, Meridian Technologies had become the most efficient manufacturing facility in its industry. The company's success attracted acquisition offers from major corporations, but Marcus declined them all. He had learned that some innovations were more valuable than money, and some consultants delivered results that exceeded every possible expectation. Elena eventually disappeared as mysteriously as she had arrived, leaving behind only a manufacturing system that continued to improve itself and a letter thanking Marcus for his willingness to bet on unconventional solutions. The $1 million gamble that was supposed to end in failure had instead delivered the most successful transformation in the company's history, proving that sometimes the greatest risks lead to the most extraordinary rewards. Years later, when business schools would study the Meridian Technologies case as an example of disruptive innovation, they would focus on the technical achievements and financial results. But Marcus knew the real lesson was simpler. When you find someone who can deliver the impossible, the price of their expertise is always a bargain, no matter how high it seems at the time. The blindfolded demonstration had revealed more than Elena's extraordinary abilities. It had shown Marcus that true innovation comes from challenging the fundamental assumptions about what's possible. In betting $1 million on failure, he had discovered success beyond his wildest imagination, delivered by a woman who proved that the most sophisticated technology of all is the human mind working in perfect harmony with the tools it creates.